Right, so how do I tag it?
There you, oh yeah. So on the lower right-hand side of that screen where it says watch together with friends or a group, go ahead and hit start.
Hang on, I see not. Oh, let's see. Send in messenger options.
Just above the share. Do you see a little
Just the
window that says
share.
watch together with a group? Just above share.
It doesn't say that.
Okay, reload your homepage. I'll bet you're going to see this in a moment.
Let me do that. Hang on a second. Let me get out of this.
This is good because we've got about a dozen people right now watching this work through this tech snafus.
All right. Okay. Notifications. Okay. So I'm on my homepage.
Okay. And you should see
now
All Access Live with your beautiful mug. Just below the window of the video, you see where it says watch together with friends or a group. Oh, you know what?
Alexis, there we go. Okay, now. Well, I see you. I see. I guess I see me, kind of. Nope, I'm frozen.
Hey, you know what? I could actually do this on your timeline. Or no, I can't. Yeah, but since I'm tagged, you're seeing your video on your Facebook feed, correct?
Very delayed, though.
Yeah. Okay. So now, don't even look at your Facebook anymore. Let's go back to Zoom so we can see it in real time. Sound good?
Yeah. Let me get out of this then. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So that was quite an introduction, but I'm going to do a formal one here. First of all, I noticed that a lot of our friends in the music industry right now are chiming in and popping in to see this. This gentleman is a native of the homeland of dear friends of ours in the Dan Reed Network. Moved out here, I believe, with them from Aberdeen, South Dakota. So we'll get some of that background. But from that point, this dude has worked with the industry's greatest, from Little River Band to Chicago and Pat Benatar, and of course, Dan Reed Network. So right now, he's going to share a little bit of insight on what a world famous tour manager does in a pandemic quarantine. So, ladies and gentlemen, I've got Terry Finley.
Hello, everybody.
How you doing, buddy?
If there's anybody there, I'm doing good. Am I actually on? Because I'm not. My little screen is. I'm just frozen, so I can't tell.
You know, you are on, and you're frozen.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, but you froze up for a second. You might have Facebook police locking you down for a minute.
Oh, okay.
But your mug is gorgeous, you know. So you've got a bunch of trophies. You got a bunch of trophies behind you.
Oh, those are silly. I should have thrown them away years ago. They're just stuff from when I was a kid, but I just couldn't. I thought about just boxing them up and throwing them in the trash, but I thought, no, it's. But that was a lifetime ago when I was a little boy playing tennis a lot.
Oh, tennis was your thing.
Yeah, it was an ironic twist in life. My house that we just moved my mom out of last summer. She had been in there for 69 years. She's 97 now. The year I was born, it's right across the street from the high school, and the high school decided they wanted to build some tennis courts. So they bought the couple houses next to ours, dozed them, built 3 tennis courts. So I grew up with 3 tennis courts like about 10 feet from our house, and we had a gate in our backyard and everything. So we did everything out there. We learned how to play tennis, but we also skated and played frisbee and played football and whatever else needed to be. It was like having our own little playground right there. So
that's back in Aberdeen.
In Aberdeen, yep.
Yeah, so there aren't that many months of the year that you can do outdoor activities like that, are there?
It's like, you grew up in Montana, right? So it's probably from late May until, into October-ish, if you're lucky.
Yeah, I think September was when we had our first big snowfalls where I was at, but
a little bit later for us, but just depended on the year. We had years where we'd get snowstorms in March and April, so you never know.
So you were in Aberdeen playing tennis, but I know that you were a drummer first too, right?
Well, I play the drums. I wouldn't say I'm a drummer, not like you or Danny Pred, but I could muddle my way through a couple of songs here and there, sure.
Yeah, well, you've done some pretty notable gigs, man. I know. When did you start playing drums?
Well, when I was about 10, I went to a rummage sale with my mom, and they had a snare drum for sale, and I convinced her to let me buy it. I cannot believe to this day that she let me do that. And forever I didn't even have a stand. I just would sit on my bed and put it between my legs.
Oh my
And I
God.
bought a couple of actual drumsticks at the little music store, and I put a towel over it. Otherwise it was like crazy loud. It sounded like a timpani drum, you know? One of the
Yeah.
first things I ever did was do the Hawaii 5-0 thing,
Oh yeah.
which is kind of ironic now. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
And you know, I didn't have any other drums. I had a little set of bongos that I got later, but I did
Okay.
have a little stand. So I kind of created my own little thing. And then when I was about 12, I convinced my mom to buy me this little blue sparkle trap kit
Oh
out of like a Sears catalog, I think it was, or maybe it was JCPenney, I can't remember, but that was a big deal. My brother, I was at his house one day. He was a guitar player. He's about 7 years older than me, and I was air drumming. And he's like, "Well, you know, you look like you could actually play drums, you know." And I said, "Well, maybe. I don't know. I'd never actually sat behind a drum set before. I watched, you know, Midnight Special occasionally, and you know, you didn't get to see people play very often.
Oh,
You know,
that's true. Yeah. You just heard him.
you just heard them. So
Yeah.
my brother convinced my mom to go ahead and let me have this drum set, just a little, you know, one of those little baby kits, you know, like the cymbal stands were like this big around.
Yeah.
And you know, I started playing, let's put on the headphones and put on an album. And just, I mean, can't tell you how many times I played some Cheap Trick or Ted Nugent or God knows what it was back then, you know, but and it took a while before. I mean, I played with my brother a lot. We used to have jam sessions, you know,
Okay.
just him, the guitar, and me. And then later on, right, I think probably the summer between my junior and senior year, I actually joined a little band, and that was
Oh,
the year that I met Dan Reed and Dan Pred. That was
really?
how I met them. Yeah,
What year was
I
that?
didn't really know them. Well, that would have been '79, summer of
Oh my
'79.
God. Wow. Yeah. Hey, really quick. I think because your screen is frozen, I think you've actually got it set so that you're just showing a still photo. Let's try this.
Oh,
Try this real quick. Next to the microphone at the bottom where it says stop video,
uh-huh.
make sure that that says start video.
Okay.
Okay, now
So,
go ahead and start video
okay.
again.
Okay.
There we go. Yeah, you're unfrozen. Beautiful.
All right.
You know,
Okay. Cool.
Zoom did an automatic update just before we went live here, and so I think some of the configurations are a little funky, but
Oh, okay.
yeah,
So good.
now we get to see live Terry Finley in action. This is beautiful.
All
All right,
right.
79. You got to meet Dan, both Dans, and were they?
Yeah, I kind of knew who they were a little bit. I knew Dan. I had seen them. Like I said, I grew up right across the street from the high school, and I wasn't going to that high school at the time. I was going to the Catholic high school in our town. We had two high schools: the public one, which is the big one, which we lived literally right across the street from.
Okay.
And but I had my elementary school closed before my fifth grade, and I ended up having to go to the Catholic school, which was pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to go there. I wanted to go with the rest of my friends who got split between two different public elementary schools. Once mine closed and became part of the high school, they needed more space. It was part of the same complex to begin with. So anyway, I ended up going to the Catholic school, and so I went to see the talent show, which would have been, I guess it was the it was sophomore year for us, for Dan and I, Dan Reed and I. Dan Pred was a year behind.
Okay.
They played in the talent show with their band, which was called Nightwing.
Oh,
And they won. They won the talent show
of course
playing an original song that Dan wrote. I can't remember what it is now off the top of my head, but I was just completely blown away. I was, you know, first of all, it made me feel like I didn't want to try and play drums anymore because Dan was a proper drummer. You know, he was in the marching band. He knew how to read charts and all that kind of stuff. I didn't know any of that stuff. I just knew what I heard. I had good ears. I always remember little fills and stuff like that still to this day.
Yeah.
You put on any 70s, 80s song and I know exactly where every little thing is, you know.
You bet.
So it just was kind of one of those things. And then I met Dan one day. I'll never forget. I was dating this girl briefly, and she worked at Burger King and with Dan. And she said she knew that I was playing in this little band. You know, we played like the county fair at a barbecue or two at the VFW, little things like that. And she said, "You got to meet this guy, Dan Reed. He just moved to town. He was from this little farm town kind of near us. Our town was about 28,000 people. Right. So it was the biggest town within about 200 miles.
Metropolis.
He grew up in a very little small farm town on a farm, a big old ranch. And they said, this guy, he's Hawaiian, and he's kind of looks like Bruce Lee, and he's a singer and plays guitar and stuff. You guys should meet. So we met one day. He was sweeping the floor at Burger King. If you can imagine Dan Reed in his little hat, and the brown and orange thing. Burger King was kind of new in town. It was like a big deal that we got this Burger King. And that was when I met him for the first time. And I was playing in my little trio, and they had their band going. And I used to go see them practice at Dan Fred's basement.
Oh, cool.
And it was just, they were just so good compared. We didn't have a clue what we were doing compared to what these guys were doing. And, later that summer, they bought an old school bus, and they were actually going out doing gigs at little bars in other little towns around us. So I started kind of working with them more than playing in my own band. I used to run sound and lights.
No kidding.
And sing and play cowbell and stuff like that from out front. I used to sing backups. They ran a mic line out to me, and we built our own lighting desk with stuff that Dan and I acquired parts for from various places in the dead of night, I should say.
They fell off the back of the truck.
My screen froze again, I see, but
it did.
It's so weird. I wonder why. I've got such great speed here.
You got download speed. Give it up is
well, it's about 18. Is that good or bad? I don't know. The upload speed.
Try again. Let's see again. If you switch it back, we don't want to miss this. Like, you've got the greatest smile in rock and roll. There he is. Yeah, you do, man. You and Anna both actually. You have like infectious smiles. It's a good thing. But,
my sweet wife.
Yeah, but no, let's go back to the newly acquired gear that you made a lighting desk from.
This will lead into a kind of a funny little story. But Dan and I built this. Mostly Dan built this lighting desk. He knew about soldering and stuff like that. So we got all these electrical parts, and we used like the switches. They were kind of new back then. That the kind of like a light switch, that was more flat. That click down kind of things. Okay. They work great for a lighting board, right? And it was all on one master power switch, by the way. So one day we went out to do this little gig in this little bar with the ceiling about maybe 7 feet tall down in the basement of this place in a little town called Hecla, South Dakota, population about 250.
Okay.
But it was a popular
chicken wire.
Yeah, we're not quite chicken wire, but it was something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm rocking away, I'm doing the lights and stuff, and we didn't have fog, but we had these flash pots.
Okay. Make sure you bring pyro into the low ceiling rooms. That's good.
Yeah, Great White had nothing on us, and I froze again. Sorry. Anyway, we played the first set. They played the first set. I didn't play. I mean, I'm running the sound, and I'm singing little kind of backup harmonies on like Hot Roller. You remember Roller, the song by
April Wine?
By April Wine.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of, I'm helping out, doing a little bit of vocal stuff, and then they decided it's time to take a break. So. But we had come to this point in the song. I think it was, oh gosh, I want to say, I don't know. I'm sorry, I keep freezing. This is not working out well for us here today.
That's okay.
It doesn't really matter what song it was, but I hit the flash pot on cue, but only one of them went. And it was just like a little bit of gunpowder and the electrical flash and a tube, like about this size, steel tube that the bass player, I think, had made.
Okay.
Scott.
That's called the pipe bomb.
Sour.
Anyway.
Exactly. So anyway, one of them goes and the other one doesn't. And I thought, well, that's a bummer. It didn't really happen, but it looked great and everyone would nod, and then we took a break. And so we're all kind of heading out to go out and smoke or whatever. We're only keep in mind, we're only 15 at the time.
Oh my God. Okay.
The bars in the area were 18. That was the drinking age back then for 3-2 beer. So somehow we got away with it. I don't remember why, but Scott said, I want to check and see why that pot didn't go first.
Oh,
well, I'm no electrician or lighting designer by any stretch, and I did not turn off the main power switch on the board out front. And he's literally right over the top of the tube.
Oh.
And all of a sudden,
oh no,
it goes right in his face.
Oh my God.
And I mean, I've never been so scared. He was writhing around, screaming, yelling, holding the sky. I thought he was blind, but he, singed off part of his eyebrow and half his mustache. And
that's it.
couldn't. Yeah, got lucky.
Wow, no kidding, man. God, it's good you can laugh about it now, man. I thought we were talking about a great white story in a second.
Oh, no. It instead of lighting the club on fire, I lit the bass player on fire
Oh God,
instead.
and he probably still can't grow hair on that side of his face. He could tell this story forever, man. Wow, how'd you get that scar tissue? Well, it's a funny story.
Yeah, this idiot that we used to have work for us.
Man, did you know at 15 that you were going to be involved in the entertainment industry for the rest of your life?
No, it wasn't. No clue, zero clue, because the next fall was the start of our senior year, and it kind of just carried on that way. I was still playing with this little combo as a trio, and they were doing their thing, and they were growing by leaps and bounds. And like I said, they had bought a bus, and they had like a little backdrop, and I mean, Dan had this big double bass, proper big drum set. I had this little thing,
Yeah.
And but it was the time in your life when everyone's like, the SATs and where are you going to go to college, and like, man, I hated school back then. I just was not a good student. I was the classic kid of like, if you would just put a little bit of effort into this, Terry, you could be a great student. The teachers loved me, but I just didn't care. And when I had transferred for my junior year to the public school, the curriculum at the parochial school was way ahead. So I had a lot of credits. So when it came time to senior year, I really only had to be in school until like December, and I was done. I had enough credits to graduate. And in fact, my counselor kept saying, you don't even really have to be here anymore.
Oh, they just want you gone. No, you're such a nice guy. They don't want to get rid of the nice guys.
Yeah, well, I was causing trouble by being late to my first period of class all the time. I keep freezing here.
That was a good freeze, though, right there. That was awesome.
My art teacher in my first class of the day, which started at like 8:30, and I could jump out of my bed, throw on my clothes, and be in the classroom in about 3 minutes if I really wanted to.
Wow.
And I was always late because I'd stop off at this. We had an area where you could buy donuts and stuff to play video games. It was like we called it the Commons.
Oh yeah.
It was quite of a progressive school for back then. And I would stop and get like a maple bar or something like that before I would head into class. And I'd walk in 5 minutes late all the time because I knew that it didn't matter. I was art class, first of all, and I was already had enough credits to graduate. So the teacher decided one day he was going to take me into the counselor's office and set me straight. And he was surprised to find out I live right across the street. He had no idea. Anyway, I forgot where I was even going. I get rambling there.
Well, I was asking you if you felt like this is going to be something you were going to do.
Oh, right. So a buddy of mine told me one day, he goes, you know what? I'm going in the Air Force. You should think about going in the Air Force. They'll fly you down to Sioux Falls to get your physical and all that, and you can delay your entry. I'd never been on a plane before, and all that. And so I still to this day, I never really intended at that moment to actually go. I went and met the guy and this and that and the other. And my dad had been in the Army in World War II and whatnot. And I never thought of myself as going in the military, but I did. I went down, I took my physical, I flew down, and I got it all set up to go in, delayed enlistment the following August after graduation.
Okay.
And so, it just went to a lot of parties and had fun with our bands and stuff after graduation during that summer. And then August 3rd rolled around and off I went on a plane. Ironically, the day I flew out was the day of the, I don't know if you're old enough to remember this, but we had a big air traffic controller strike back then when Reagan was president.
Right. Okay.
1981. It was the day that I flew down. I got as far as Sioux Falls on my way to San Antonio, and I got stuck there for like 2 or 3 days while this whole thing played out. But I figured that was it. That was the end of it. Bye everybody. And
going to the Army.
And Dan Reed's parents decided they wanted to move. His mother wanted to move back to Portland.
Okay.
Where she was from.
Okay.
His dad said fine. He was done with farming, so they sold the farm and off they went to Portland. Well, I ended up getting stationed up in Tacoma, so I was only a couple hours away.
Right.
And so he moved to Portland, and at first his parents weren't even out here. They built this pretty nice house here in Southeast Portland, and I used to come down on the weekends, and it was just us like sleeping in sleeping bags in his living room. They didn't even get the furniture; nothing was there yet. The first couple times I came down, and I ended up coming down one time a few months afterwards, and he goes, "Guess what we're gonna do?" He picks me up at the bus station. And I go, "What?" He goes, "We're gonna go into the studio. We're gonna cut a song."
No way. You
And
too.
I'm like, "Yeah, just the two of us." Dan Fred
Yeah.
was still in high school. He had a year to go.
Oh my
So
God.
Dan was out here by himself for a year trying to break in somehow.
Yeah. Right.
He figured he's never gonna make it in South Dakota. So
Right.
he figured he'd come to Portland, back to Portland. And so yeah, we went in the studio. We cut a couple songs called oh, I can't even remember the name of the song now. Shoot, I wish I could remember the name of the song. It was a cute little song, great song. He wrote great melodies and
Yeah.
stuff.
Hooks like for miles.
But yeah, I actually got to be the drummer on his very first recording ever.
No kidding. Please
Yeah.
tell me you have a copy of that.
I must have a cassette over here somewhere. Dan, if I don't, Dan probably does. This stupid video is driving me nuts.
Sorry about that. Yeah, if you want it keeps you on your toes because you have to keep thinking about stuff while you switch back, but you're doing really well with it. It's
I can't stand looking at these weird frozen faces. So
are mine freezing up for you too?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
So I have incredible download speed, but it's only 18 megabytes, whatever, of upload speed. So that's obviously my problem.
Sometimes they cap you. That's an unfortunate thing. But if you don't mind switching back, because I love these stories, you got a pretty incredible history. You did that recording with Dan Reed, and this is sort of the beginning of Dan's success story here in the Portland area.
That was the beginning he was just trying to get some demos together to go and basically, I think he was trying to find people to join a band, which is what he did. He joined a band that was existing here called the Nimble Darts.
Right.
Robert Roode and the Attitude was a band that he had later, but Robert brought Dan in, and they became a pretty big deal. They played a lot of when Anna was at school down at U of O. They used to play frat parties and stuff down there all the time.
Okay, Albie playing drums, right?
I don't remember who was playing drums. I didn't know Albie or anything until much later when he was playing with Rex and the Rockets.
Okay.
A band that Dan put together. But he went through that whole phase, and then he put together. Dan Fred finally then moved out here. And they were trying to do their thing, and they had a couple different versions of what later would become the network. I think they were called Romeo Void at one point. I saw him play at the ice skating rink at Clackamas Town Center.
Actually, Romeo Void was the band from the 80s that said, "I'd like you better if we slept together."
Oh, well, they were maybe called just Romeo then at one point.
Okay, all right. You don't ask me to sing. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't want to sing either. So having me sing backup in the 70s was enough of a stretch.
I just want to see the cowbell videos. You were Will Ferrell before he was there.
When that first came out, I just had to laugh because I used to be doing that. It was that Never Been Any Reason. That was it was the cowbell and Never Been Any Reason.
Head East. God, good stuff.
I haven't thought about this stuff in years.
That's what this is all about, man. This is you got to look back on this. You're stuck in a global pandemic, man. What else are you going to do besides play with your goats, right? So,
well, it's just we're here on the farm, and life is kind of the same for us. I was telling you earlier, it's just we're lucky in that stretch in that way that we're kind of socially distant to begin with. When I come home off a tour, I don't really want to go anywhere, and we're kind of tethered to the property because of our animals. That's the great thing about them is they're wonderful to have, and the bad thing is that it's really hard to find somebody to come and take care of everything we have to go away somewhere, so we don't get away a lot. So. But anyway, Dan built his group from the ground up. I used to go see him a couple times in Seattle, and I remember going to see him probably in let's see, I would say it was the year I was getting out of the service in '85, and they had really started to build a good following. And they played at a club called Astor Park in Seattle, which was a big live music club that doesn't exist anymore. But I went up there with a buddy of mine, my roommate actually, and the place was packed. We could barely get in. We were on the list. It took us 5-10 minutes just to get up there to say we were on the list. 85% girls,
of course,
and just the place was packed, and they were just spectacular, and they just blew the doors off the place. And I thought, wow, I can't believe these guys are really, to me, they had already kind of made it. I didn't know anything about the music business at the time. I just knew that they were playing this big ass club that probably held close to 1,000 people.
Right.
And it was packed wall to wall. You could barely move in there. And here were my two buddies from high school, doing the rock star thing. It was incredible.
Yeah.
And not too long after that, Dan called and said, what are you going to do? And I said, well, my dad wants me to go. I had been going to college in the Air Force through the community college of the Air Force and picking up some credits and trying to do that and work full time, which was tough. But so I didn't get close to my degree, but my dad said, well, when you come home, why don't you go to school at Northern State, which is our little university there. And, that was the plan. That was my parents' plan. They figured I was just going to come on home.
And what was your field of expertise? What were you studying?
Well, I was just basically, it was all just the generic, basic stuff that you have to have when you first get going.
Okay.
I don't even remember. It just,
but he didn't want you to come home and do like business courses or anything like that, or?
No, I think he was just keen on me going to school. My older brothers and sisters both my sisters had started to go to college and then met a guy, got pregnant, got married, dropped out of school. And so, I had taken the leap of going to be in the Air Force, which ironically ended up putting me in a situation where I worked in mission control of a C-130 flying squadron. So it taught me early computer skills when we had a little Burroughs terminal with a monitor screen about this big, and it was linked to the mainframe, which was probably less powerful than our two laptops combined. That was in a building on the other side of the base. But this is 1981. We didn't have computers in my school when I graduated. It wasn't until a year or so later that they had a computer course. And my dad had insisted that I take typing in high school. That was the only thing he ever said to me about education while I was in high school was you got to take typing.
Really?
It's important. Okay. It's important. I don't know why. He was a barber. I didn't even know he could type, but he insisted that I take typing. And I actually was pretty good at it. I actually was quite good at it. And still I'm a good typist. But everything I learned to do in the Air Force, ironically, was tailor-made, like an on-the-job training course to be a tour manager. We were doing flight schedules and what they call billeting authorization, which was their when a flight crew would fly somewhere, they have to have accommodations on the base. Rooms had to be reserved for them in the officers' quarters or the NCO quarters or whatever. And that was all part of the job that I did.
Wow.
In the phones and talking to people, and it was just it was. Later on, I realized this is really, I was doing this for 4 years. Now I'm just doing the same things in a different way.
Yeah.
Moving a band around the world, And Dan had called and said, what are you going to do? And I said, I think I'm going to go home. And he goes, no, you got to move to Portland. We need a road manager. We're going to get it signed. And we're right on the cusp. People were starting to come up and talk to him, hey kid, like the song, like the Boston song, the guy shows up in the cigar and the limo and his business card. Oh, that's a good freeze.
I love that freeze. Keep that one for a little
bit. That's a good one. That was my Mr. Big with the cigar.
That's right.
Hey. And so I thought about it, and I went home anyway because I had some leave built up. So I went home for about a month to kind of have a little fun, let my hair down, so to speak, and break it to my parents that I was going to move to Portland, Oregon, and live in Dan's guest bedroom and go to work for his band.
Mom and Dad are going to be proud.
My mom still is just so supportive. Just Good. As long as I was happy, that's all she ever cared about, was that I was happy. My dad, I'm sure, thought that I was like, God, I thought I just won. I thought you were the one that was going to have the brains, right. And now you're going to go do this. So, but when you're 21, I wasn't even 22 yet. I think when I came here, I was just a month shy of being 22.
Wow.
And Dan was playing regularly. We were doing 5 nights a week, playing at all the clubs that were around at the time.
Yeah. And
occasionally we'd go do a college or something. I think we actually came out here, ironically, to play at Mount Hood Community College once for a dance or something.
Okay.
But nowhere near needing a road manager.
Right.
Not even close.
Yeah.
Which was also at the time frustrating, but now in hindsight, a really good thing, because I didn't know how to be a road manager. I didn't know anything about the music business. So I literally learned from the ground up. Since I was a drummer, I became the drum tech for Dan.
Okay.
And then I would work the stage left side, and I would hand Melvin his basses. I couldn't tune them. Still to this day, I couldn't tune them. I had to have our guitar tech tune them and run them over to me so I could hand him a tuned bass.
Okay.
But I learned from the ground up. I learned how to wrap cords and pack cases and load the truck and drive the truck. And I did that for probably, I think, about a year and a half or so. And then I thought, God, this is not feeling a lot like sort of being a road manager of any. I mean, when we would go to Seattle for a long weekend, I would be the one to go book like 2 hotel rooms in in the Tropics Hotel in Seattle,
Right.
connected. So we had like 8 of us could be in 2 rooms, and God knows how many girls would show up afterwards that those guys would drag back. I didn't have anything to do with that, but
Of course not.
um, that was my only road management kind of thing. And I also was the one that would go and pester the bar manager to give us our $150 or whatever we were supposed to make that night.
Right.
And our meal and drink tickets. I was the one that would do that. So that was my extent of the road manager aspect of the job at the time. The rest of it was loading cases and setting up drums and driving the truck and being in charge of the crew. Essentially, I was really just the crew chief or production manager, really. So I decided I wanted to kind of get more into the management side. So I left working with the crew and started working for their manager at the time, Cheryl Hodgson. And that took me so far away from the band that then I felt like I was just working a corporate job, get on a bus every day because I didn't have a car on here, go down to Northwest 23rd and Irving to her office and work all day, helping to book opening acts and just helping her with paperwork and contracts and stuff like that. And it was just boredom. I didn't even have the energy to go to like the Friday night shows because I had to get up at like 6 a.m. to go to her office, on a Friday. So,
okay.
So I would just, I didn't like it at all. It was kind of drudgery. And so I told Dan I wanted to go back and work on the crew again, which he was happy about. So I did that. And then, next thing I know, this guy that everyone said, Mr. Big Shot is from San Francisco, is going to come and see the band. And I didn't know who Bill Graham was. I didn't have a clue.
Wow.
I grew up in South Dakota. What did I know about
Right.
some famous San Francisco concert promoter?
Right.
I didn't know. My initial meeting with him was at the old Key Largo, and they packed house, did the show, came off stage, and I did what I always did. Boy, these freezes are great.
Yeah. Sorry, buddy.
Oh, it's frustrating.
The audio keeps going well. So yeah.
I'm sorry. Anyway, I used to go on right after they would come off and go, "Come on, make some noise!" Get on the mic and really try and get the crowd going.
Prompt for an encore.
Yeah, really begging for it. Really,
right.
It was pathetic now that I think about it. And I came off stage, and I hadn't even officially met him yet, I don't think, or maybe I briefly had said, "This is Bill," and Mick. I think Mick Brigden was there too, his assistant. And he literally grabbed me and put me up against the wall at Key Largo and said, "Don't you ever, if we sign this band, don't you ever beg for an encore again."
Wow, that was your first conversation with Bill Graham. He was kicking your ass for begging for an encore.
Yeah, don't ever. That's pathetic. Don't ever do that. They were great. Crowd would have went nuts anyway. You don't need to egg them on like that. So that was my first meeting with him. He was an amazing guy, and I got along with him very, very well. But that was my initial introduction to him. And then, of course, things steamrolled real fast at that point. They signed them. Then they signed their deal with Polygram. And then next thing I know, I want to say around September-ish of '87, we're off to Vancouver to work on that first album.
Wow. Okay. So your role with the band stayed the same. You were still a road manager, even when Bill Graham picked it up.
Well, such as it was, I just kept doing what I was doing. I was in charge of the crew, and I drove the truck, and basically was a production manager, really.
Okay.
We didn't really need a road manager. We didn't really have a title for anything like that. I was just kind of the guy on the crew that dealt with some of that stuff. And we were all just tight. We all just did what needed to be done to get it done. Me and Carrie and, some of the other guys, I don't know if you never know, I think David Coles, who went on to be a guitar tech for lots of people. He worked for Santana for years, and Stu Ham, bass player and all that. And then was with Greg Allman's group for a long time.
And Moncrief worked then too, right?
Dave Moncrief, bless his soul. He was with us for a while as well. And a lot of great folks. Phil Ashley was kind of like the king at the time, because he had already worked in the big time. He had gold platinum records on the wall from working with Fleetwood Mac, and who else is he with? He had gold records for Fleetwood Mac and somebody else that he worked with back then. So it was kind of like he was a big deal roadie guy, and he and I hit it off, and he taught me a lot. He taught me how to wrap cables, and he really taught me the production stage side of the whole thing, which is great to learn years later, being just a standalone tour manager now for close to 30 years. It was great to have all that experience actually working the stage and because I I really look after my crew guys
Yeah.
when I'm on the road, and that I've always had great relationships with the crew because I kind of came from that side of the fence, you know.
You get it. Yeah, absolutely.
But so yeah, you know, the album came out and things were rocking, and it was fast. And I had a sit down with Bill and Mick one day up at Parker's in Seattle, which is another big venue. It used to be an old bowling alley. It was a huge place. And Bill said straight up, he goes, you know, you don't have the experience to do this, but Dan and the guys really, they want you to be the guy. So we're gonna put the effort into it. And we're gonna teach you how to do this, right?
Wow.
And that was amazing, except for that's not what happened. Also was a great thing. At the time, it was a horrific thing. It was a heartbreaking, gut-wrenching thing. The album came out, started to do well. Ritual came out, and it was climbing fast, 70s, 60s, but finally got up into the 40s. Heard Casey Kasem introduce it on American Top 40. I was just almost in tears. It was an unbelievable thing.
You remember that?
And oh my gosh, it was incredible to hear that and hear it on the radio for the first time in Portland on Z100. It was pretty heady days back then. Yeah. And then all of a sudden they're going on tour. We're going to go open for UB40, which was an odd mix. It was a strange pairing, but I don't even know how that worked. You know, I didn't get involved in the ins and outs of that because I wasn't being included in that end of things.
Right.
And so Mick Brigden came to town and we did a big farewell show. It may have been at the Mayor's Ball, actually. Back in those days, they had Bud Clark had a big event every year called the Mayor's Ball at the Memorial Coliseum. And it was a kind of a big, here they go, they're going off to the big time. And we had their first national TV appearance in LA was scheduled for like a week later.
Okay.
And they got a bus. Here comes the bus. The bus is coming. Come over to the house. Danny Pred and I were living together in a duplex at that point. I finally got out of Dan Reed's guest bedroom, and we have our own little place, you know, with another roommate. So we went over to Dan's house, and this freezing thing is really starting to be frustrating. Hear this old, now that I look back, wow, what a joke. This old rickety Eagle bus with a school bus style door shows up, right? But it had bunks and it had the lounge and big couches, and we were like, oh, can you believe this? This is everything that we'd all ever dreamed about.
The big time.
The big time. And I don't even know, I'm telling you a story that I don't think you even know.
I don't know.
So the next day, I'm supposed to go meet Mick at the Red Lion Hotel. He's flying home to San Francisco, but he wants to talk to me about how this is all going to work. So I go down there, I'm all excited. And I was dating on at the time. We started dating, ironically, right before we went to Canada.
Wow.
So we started dating in 87. In August of 87, we'll be together 32 years.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah, our wedding anniversary this year is 30 in September.
Amazing.
She's put up with my crap for 32 years. It's shocking, but still, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. So anyway, I go to this meeting and I'm all excited. I'm a little puppy dog ready to go on the big time. And he says, no.
Wow.
You're out of here, bud. Sorry, we don't have time. We don't have the money. We can't afford to hire somebody else to try and teach you. And I'm sorry, but you're out of here.
Wow.
And it was, wow. I mean, it was shocking and stunning. And
a week before.
And I want to say it was not even a week, actually. I think we were supposed to be leaving in a couple of days.
Oh, man.
This is like a Saturday. This is probably a Sunday morning, really. I think the show at the Coliseum was like on Saturday night. And the band knew, but, you know, Dan Pred was he's literally the sweetest person in the world.
I love
and he didn't want to tell me, obviously. Why would you?
Right.
I had my best friend from the Air Force was staying with us at the time, you know, and my brand new girlfriend was there, you know, and so I come back from this thing and like he couldn't hardly look me in the eye. He was crushed on my behalf, you know.
Yeah, of course.
But on the other hand, they're getting ready to go on tour, so there wasn't no time to be, you know. But anyway, a week later, I'm sitting in our duplex living room watching them perform on live national TV, and that was a gut punch.
I bet.
But, you know, it's not a sad story because in the end, it ended up being such a godsend because they were absolutely right. And I have been on the other side of this many times over the years where you have to tell somebody like, a baby band that you're supposed to go take on tour, and you're like, dude, you got to get rid of, who is this guy? Well, he's my cousin. Well, your cousin doesn't know shit about driving a truck or wrapping cables or setting up a drum set. So we need to get a real person in here.
A liability, right? Yeah.
Let alone a road manager. I mean, I had to do it with a lot of crew guys to say, sorry, buddy, but your cousin is going to go off and be a rock star, and you ain't coming. So I felt for him because I was there. But it was the right thing to do with me, and it was certainly the right thing to do, that I had to do over the years too. So anyway, what happened was I ended up, they were heavily involved. Bill had been instrumental in starting a company called Winterland Merchandising, mostly for the Grateful Dead, as a way for them to sell concert merch.
Right.
And so at the time, they handled most of the big acts. All their merchandise, tour merchandise, was being sold by Winterland. So they said, look, I know this sucks. It really sucks. We understand that it sucks, but we can't do anything about it. You don't know enough about this. So what we can do is we can put you out. We can give you a job with Winterland, and we'll put you out on tour, and you can, stick close to the guys that run those things and try and learn from them. So next thing I know, I'm flying out, and I'm suddenly on tour with Tiffany.
What?
Selling T-shirts for Tiffany.
No.
Yeah, on her first big tour, and I'm telling you right now, I'm standing backstage on the back of my truck. I'm getting T-shirts loaded in, and they said, well, we have an opening act tonight. Oh, are you kidding me? An opening act? She wasn't doing that great ticket wise anyway. She had gone from the ball thing, and then she was doing an actual playing mostly sheds.
Right.
But we're only doing like 4,000 in a 15,000 seat place.
Ouch.
But we're playing a theater this night, and I think Sioux City or Des Moines, and so they said this opening act is coming. They wanted me to get the truck out of the way because this bus was coming in.
Okay.
And so I do all that, and here comes this rickety old bus, and out jumps these, I think I can't remember how many they are, 4 or 5 guys, little guys, and they're little Adidas jumpsuits, and they come and they do their little dance routine, and they have a reel-to-reel tape behind the bass rig playing their tracks, and it was New Kids on the Block.
Oh my God.
It was their very first show ever.
Wow.
Their first concert. I mean, they had probably done some mall stuff themselves or stuff like that, but
Tiffany's opening act,
and that was summer of '88, and by the end of that tour, they had exploded. She was their opening act, and they ended up playing the Kingdom by the end of that year in Seattle. So that was crazy.
And you were doing that whole tour?
No, I did that merch. I did not. I was on 3 different tours that summer for Winterland, which is all amazing because they were all various levels. And so I went from that to the George Michael Faith tour.
Wow. So
I went from selling 3,500 to 4,000 to 20,000 a night, selling like 150, 200 grand worth of merch, and having to drive in a 24-foot box truck. We had 2 of them. There's 2 of us assistants and the main guy. And I did that for a while, and then I finished the summer with Richard Marx, who was on his big tour when he first hit.
Yeah.
And his opening act was John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band.
Okay. Wow.
And right about that time when I was with Richard Marx, Dan called. They were still on tour with UB40, and said, fuck these guys. This is bullshit. We want you to come back.
Wow. Okay.
And I had to think about it, but I didn't want to sell T-shirts. That's not why I came out here to sell T-shirts. It was interesting, and I did get to meet some people that really sort of taught me things. I stuck to people who were like, "Who's that guy? He's the tour manager. Cool. He's the tour accountant." That was also good. Just kind of hang around the office sometimes. Do you guys need any shirts? What are you doing? Just asking questions. And so I said, okay, I finished up this thing, and I flew from like Moline, Illinois or something, where we were finishing up with Richard Marx, and I flew ironically to San Francisco, where Bill's office and everything was, because they were playing, I think they were playing Shoreline Amphitheater. But what I didn't know was that he didn't bother to tell Bill or anybody that he had hired me back.
Oh no.
Or really, I didn't know that I wasn't actually hired back. There was no salary. I had no hotel room. I had no salary. They used to like pool together $5 or $10 each to give me. I slept on the bus with no AC or nothing in the parking lot while they all went into rooms in a hotel.
Oh,
I didn't know any of this till I got there, of course, but it didn't matter. It was I was back with the guys, and he was kind of giving them the big finger and saying, because I think at that point he'd already kind of figured out that it wasn't a great fit. Really, Bill didn't really have an artist like him. They didn't really know what to do with him. He
sure.
had Santana, and he had the Neville brothers and Eddie Money, and people that were pretty established. So they didn't really have to do any groundbreaking stuff like they were going to have to do with Dan.
Sure.
So it wasn't long after that they then switched management companies to Q Prime in New York.
That's right. All right,
Cliff and Peter and Tony Ducaccio, who was the guy that ran everything for him. He's the guy that hired everybody and ran the office and stuff. So I cozied up to him and became really good friends with him.
Okay.
And that became a really good working friendship. And I let him know early on that I wanted to become their road manager, but that I knew that I wasn't ready to do that yet, but I just wanted to learn. So when we went to Europe in the winter of '89 to open for Bon Jovi, which was like, wow, holy crap, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Slam was out then, I think. Slam had come out.
Okay.
And Nile Rodgers had produced that, and it was a lot of buzz was going on. It was already had a lot of buzz within the industry for the first album, which was still an amazing record.
Right.
But it just didn't. Bill Graham's people didn't know what to do with it and how to present them in the right way. So Ritual came and went, and I didn't even know if they had another charted hit off that album. But Slam was coming out, and they had been at the Power Station in New York recording it, and so here we go. We got the Bon Jovi tour. So off we fly to Europe, and they hired a tour manager out of Nashville, a guy named Dan Gillis, and he was a good buddy, and he took me under his wing, and he let me kind of be his assistant in a lot of ways. I still set up drums and was like the crew chief, and but he let me, I'd help with the day sheets, and I'd run around, slip them under the doors. And I was like, wow, that's what a great idea to, boy, I'm freezing up like left and right now. What a great idea. What a great way to let everybody know what's happening all the time. All the info I need for today is on this one sheet.
Right. This is the formation of your first day sheet process. No,
yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's like, there's a good freeze. This is going to be the one that everyone's going to like. All these individual pictures are going to pop up of me on Facebook. Like, look at this.
The screenshots. I love it.
So anyway, we had a great time on that, and I learned a lot. And then we came home, and then not too long after that, I don't remember, probably a couple months, we found out, holy crap, you're never going to believe this, but we're going to go back to Europe and open for the Rolling Stones.
God, yeah, huge.
It was just
insane,
beyond ridiculous. I mean, nobody could have even fathomed that kind of stuff. I mean, we were supposed to start in London, and Keith injured his hand somehow. I think he actually, the rumor was that he had cut his finger on a guitar string and it got infected.
Oh God, yeah.
Because I remember these T-shirts that the local crew that worked at Wembley made up that had like the middle finger all bandaged up, and it said, "I didn't get no satisfaction at Wembley," because they had to postpone those dates. We ended up sitting in London doing nothing for like 8 days. And we actually did the first show with them up in Cardiff, Wales.
Okay.
To like 90,000 people.
Right. Huge. Was it Q Prime that put that together, that tour?
Yeah.
Wow, amazing.
They were hired as I think as the tour producers for the Stones. The Steel Wheels tour in the States, and then it became what they call the Urban Jungle tour in Europe.
Okay.
And so, and another tour manager, a guy named Ian Jeffries, who I learned a lot from, because he had been for a long time with Black Sabbath and Ozzy and Crosby, Stills and Nash, and just a laundry list of big acts that he had been with. English guy, and he was great. He was a stop and go thing for him. It was a one-off deal. He wasn't coming in to be our tour manager forever. He was there for the summer when we were with the Stones, and he was probably going back to Crosby, Stills and Nash or whoever. And so he taught me everything, really.
Wow.
It was amazing to just kind of cling to him and follow him around like a little puppy dog. And
is he still around?
I ran into him once down in LA, many years later when I was with Little River Band, and he was with Crosby, Stills and Nash at the time. And he remembered me, and we had a great time. We had breakfast and hung out for a little while. And I'm sure he's long since retired now. That was a long time ago, but he was probably in his 40s, pushing 50 back then. So
probably cool for him to see, though, that you had sort of worked your way up from there. Like, man, this process to get you where you're at, right? You're on Stones tour with Dan Reed Network, and you kind of just were dragged along by your buddies, right? In order to kind of get to this point. I heard things about that Rolling Stones tour that the Stones fans were not real receptive to the network, because for everybody, right? I think Living Color.
First of all, they went over big with Bon Jovi. The Bon Jovi crowd seemed to really, and that was a frustrating thing, because they were both on the same label, and John and Dan were constantly being drug off to go shoot some cover for Kerrang magazine or some other heavy metal thing. The two golden-haired boys, right. And part of that led to Dan just saying, I can't stand this thing that, like, they don't care about my songs. They only want to care about what I look like.
Right.
And which is why we were all shocked when suddenly he shows up one day with no hair, and we're like, what the hell is going on? But, so he had to deal with that on top of, he's going back to Europe 6 months later, and now he's bald.
Right.
And he's trying to ditch the sort of pretty boy image and said, look, I'm writing stuff here that I want you to hear and listen to. And so he was trying to overcome that, and he was playing to a much older crowd that was there to hear, Can't Get No Satisfaction, and they're listening to this rock funk band with, like, who the hell is this bunch of people?
Right.
I don't remember it ever tanking. I remember them being pretty pissed a couple times, because they love to throw shit at people over there. Kind of in the 70s with the punk acts, they spit on the bands, and then they would throw coins, those thick ass European kroner and stuff, and Dan got hit in the head, Brian got hit in the face a couple times, and it was all they could do to stay up there and keep playing. I think a couple times they just said, fuck it, and we're out of here, and I'm not going to stand here and get hit by shrapnel.
Right.
So the next album then was The Heat, and I want to say they did that one back in Vancouver again.
Yep.
I think I did. They went back to Little Mountain in Vancouver for that one. And Bruce Fairbairn and Mike Fraser engineered it, and those guys, that amazing team of people up there. And so that was when I went to Tony when we were getting ready to do the US tour, and just said, look, if I'm going to keep doing this, I gotta make that leap. You got to give me a shot. And so they did. That was my first tour management gig. It was in '91 on the Heat tour.
Wow.
And so it was all up to me at that point, the money and logistics and dragging them from hotel to hotel and getting there on time and the whole bit.
Wow, that you honed your chops.
Yeah, I felt like I'd finally did what I'd come here to do. It only took 6 years by that point to get to there, but it was well worth it. The experiences, you cannot just jump into something like that. You really.
That was I see people. That was your college education right there, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. I see people all the time that they show up and they're with the band. It's sometimes bigger acts too. And you're like, who is this guy?
Right.
And then somebody would be like, Cousin Eddie's here again, like asking about, can we get some more meal tickets? It's like, dude, this isn't your show. What do you mean more meal tickets?
Right.
Well, we got 20 of our friends showed up from, no.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful that I had to go through all that to get to that point. And then ironically, they said, we're done.
That's it.
Like, I mean, what do you mean you're done? Like, we're done. We're going to take a break, I think is what it was. I don't remember. It's kind of, it's been a long time.
Who would have thought that it'd be a 25-year break, right?
Yeah. But I mean, now to this day now, this 29 years ago. So it's like, I don't remember exactly what the conversations were like, but I just remember that it was basically over. Yeah. They did go and do an Australian tour, I think in 92, but I did not do that because I had kind of went to Tony and other people that I had met along the way and said, look, I'm looking for a gig. And in 92, I got a separate from everything. I kind of finally gone out on my own, and I got a tour working for an Australian Aboriginal group called Yothu Yindi.
Wow.
Which was a strange kind of a combination of an Australian rock band and a traditional Aboriginal tribal dance troupe. It was a funny thing, but they had this song called Treaty, which was like a dance hit, an international dance hit. And it was on the soundtrack to a movie called Encino Man here in America, Brendan Fraser and Pauly Shore.
Right.
So we went and did the big world premiere for that. They were on Hollywood Records, which is a brand new thing. And so I ended up doing the entire world tour with them. We went twice around America. We did all around Australia, of course, because they were from way out in the bush up in Darwin. So we played all these little bush towns. And
oh my God!
But they were big. They were big time in Australia. They were like he was named like the Australian of the Year. We played what's the equivalent of doing this halftime at the Super Bowl. We did the halftime or what pre-game, I think, for the football, the Australian rules football championship game that they had in Melbourne. And we did Europe and stuff as well. And if you had 7 hours, I got a billion stories on that tour. But then it just kind of led me down. Q Prime was still in the mix, and I went and did a bunch of groups that you probably don't know I worked with too. Like I worked with a lot of younger, up and coming heavy metal groups going back to Europe. Like Armored Saint.
Absolutely, man. Like, yeah.
I was with the Armored Saint. We opened up for the Scorpions, did a big tour with Scorpions over there, and mostly in Germany. Dude. And then Suicidal Tendencies.
Wait, so Armored Saint was working with the Scorps. They were opening, but you weren't on the Scorps tour side.
I wasn't with the Scorps,
but I was the tour manager for Armored Saint.
Okay.
Opening for the Scorps. Yep. Nice. And then I got Tony gave me the Suicidal Tendencies gig, and they were actually opening for themselves. Mike Muir had another band called Infectious Grooves.
Infectious Grooves, baby, yeah.
And him and Robert Trujillo, who's with Metallica now. Those guys that was a long night for them because they would come out and they would open the show as the Infectious Grooves, and then they take a break, and they'd come out and do the whole set as Suicidal Tendencies. You know. Yeah. First band I was ever with it, like I didn't know anything about them. I remember laying in bed one night and Headbangers Ball was on MTV at the time, and their video was coming on, and I said, Anna, I go, this is she's like,
this group?
Seriously?
All I wanted was a Pepsi.
Exactly. She's like, you're nuts. I'm like, well, you know, you do it's money and it's experience too. You know?
For sure.
And then my actual big break, aside from, you know, Dan and my relationship with him, which is really the crux of everything for me, was I got a call through a company in LA called Tribe Management, which is part of a live entertainment. And that was all part of, and I'm going to forget his name now, legendary manager Shep Gordon, who handles Alice Cooper and Kenny Loggins and a bunch of people. But they also had a separate little division called Tribe that did more international kind of stuff, like that Youth the Indie thing. And they called me and said, a buddy of mine called and said that do you remember a band called Little River Band? I'm like, of course I do. They were the only group in the world between 1978 and 82 that had a top 5 single in America every one of those years. Wow. Even the Eagles and Fleetwood Mac and all those groups didn't. They were the ones. They were top 5 magic at that time.
You bet.
And I'm like, of course I do, you know. And so they're doing a 20th anniversary tour. They got a big box set coming out on Rhino, the retrospective thing, and they're getting back together with Glenn Shorrock, their original singer, and they're looking for a road manager. So I said I'd love to have the opportunity, and they said, okay, well, they want to meet you first. Derek Polici, the drummer, is going to be in LA for some meetings. And could you come down and meet him? So St. Patrick's Day of 1995.
Okay.
I flew to LA and got together with him, and we went out to this bar in LA called the Cat and Fiddle, I think.
Yeah.
English.
Allen Fiddle, right? Is that right?
Is it the Allen Fiddle?
Could be.
Another place. I've been there. Forgot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody will chime in with the right answer.
Yeah, right. So I'm like, okay, so we'll go out and have some bangers and mash or whatever. You know, I'd spent a lot of time in England by that point, so I was all we'll get a pint of Guinness and we'll go have some beers and we'll, you know, eat some food and have some fun. And we spend the night. We run into Mick Taylor of all people, formerly with the Rolling Stones.
Right.
I forget which albums he played on, but he like the Sea of Red Door and Painted Black. I think he played on that. I'm not sure which album or two that he was on with the Stones. I think before Ronnie Wood came in.
Okay.
but he was the classic British, like almost like a movie caricature. He had the sleeves rolled up in the jacket with the scarf,
Of course.
and telling all the stories. And Derek and I just got piss drunk with Mick, and by the end of it all, I had a gig.
Wow.
And in May of that year, that was my kind of my first actual big break, really. As it turned out, I didn't know that at the time. I figured it was just going to be a one-off thing. I flew down to LA to start the tour in May, late May, and they were rehearsing at SIR. And I walk into SIR scared shitless because I know I'm about to meet, a bunch of the original guys. Glenn was there, and Wayne Nelson was still there, and Derek, of course, and so I'm nervous as hell. Peter Beckett from Player was in the band at the time, so that they used to do "Baby Come Back" every night. He had a #1 single, and I walk in the doors and I'm just freaking out because I'm like, I got no one, I got no Dan to have Blake or anybody to cling on to. This is just me out there, and the first person I literally run into is Pat Benatar.
Oh, wow. And I was
knocked her
over. Yep. She was rehearsing. Her and Neil were rehearsing next door. Myron Grumbacher was still playing drums.
Wow.
And she had a handful of change, and she was just trying to get a candy bar or something. And I come bursting around the corner and I almost knock her down, and she's like, "Hey, do you have a quarter?" I don't know. I gave her like 50 cents or something so she could manage to get a candy bar. And then I walk in and I hear them playing the opening notes to Cool Change.
Oh, wow.
And I just like hair on the arms stand up, and I was with them for 11 years.
Wow.
It just kept going, that thing. We were like the little engine that could, go do a tour and then have the winter off, then gear, because everybody was coming from Australia at the time except for Wayne, who was the only American in the band. And it just grew. Lineups changed, but we just kept going, and I kind of ended up helping to manage them along the way as well. I got them some distribution deals in Europe and whatnot, and then that, as they always do, that led to other things. That's how I met the guys in Chicago. We opened up for them a couple of times that year. Minnesota State Fair was the first time I ever met them, and so by the time 2005 came along, I kept in good touch with their tour manager that they have again now. He came back to replace me. I replaced him, and he replaced me. But he called me in 2006 and said, I need a change, man. You probably do too. How long have you been with these guys? I go, 11 years. He goes, yeah, I've been here since like 89 with these guys. And I got a chance to go out with, I forget who he was going out with, but would you consider leaving that and coming in? We had been kind of bouncing back and forth. He was doing, I know, he was working with Fiona Apple.
Okay. Yeah.
And so he was going back and forth between Chicago and Fiona Apple, and I was going back and forth between Little River Band and Chicago. And we were kind of crossing over each other, and it was dovetailing nicely and working out great. We both had 2 gigs essentially.
Yeah.
And so after that, he finally kind of felt comfortable enough to go to their manager and say, "What do you think about giving me a chance to go work with Fee for the summer, and Terry will come in and take over, because the guys know him. He's done about 20 some gigs with them now or so." And Robert and Jimmy and those guys had signed off on it and said, "Yeah, if you have to, we want somebody that we know and trust." And by that point, they said they did. So that was my introduction to them. And then that was crazy. That was crazy.
What, I mean, I was just going to say, like, Little River Band's big enough. You got all the guys and a lot of moving parts, but then you've got Chicago. You got the horn section. You got all sorts of
suddenly
to manage, and
it's 9 people instead of 5. It's 2 buses. It's 4 of their founding members. I'm on the bus with them. So that's that whole summer. We're playing a double bill with Huey Lewis and the News.
Okay.
Which is kind of an odd mix, but
no, I see the pairing. Got the horns.
Yeah. And so I'm riding on the bus every night with these guys, these 4 guys, these 4 legendary guys, and Jimmy and Walt Perzeder, Jimmy Pankow, they love to tell stories. So I was kind of the newbie that hadn't heard these stories before. So I spent countless hours drinking beer in the back lounge with these guys, just me and those 2, like my own private behind the music thing, where they would just tell me all these amazing stories of their shenanigans back in the day in the 70s and up at Caribou Ranch, and Terry and all that stuff that happened with him, and that was a pretty incredible time. I remember riding in the car. I had talked to Steve about it, and then he called me back and said, okay, Peter signed off on it, Peter Chivarelli, the manager, and the guys are okay. So we'll get you all set up. I'll have Janet, the travel agent, call you, and we'll get you your air stuff all sorted out. And I was with Anna, and we were driving somewhere, and I said, so what would you think if I, went to work for Chicago full time? And she just was like, you can believe it,
Yeah.
She's always been, incredibly supportive and like my biggest fan. So that was just,
you worked through this process a lot. One of the things that I love to see with my friends that are in this industry is when they've got a supportive partner, right? Somebody that gets it. And the formative years of your relationship were also spent as formative years of you understanding the business and kind of building it up. So it's not like they come in and have it be a big surprise, right?
Yeah.
That all of a sudden, oh, hey, by the way, I'm going to go off for, 9 months out of the year, but it's something that they can already see that this is your lifeblood and you're passionate about it. You're really good at it. And they know that that's what fulfills you. Besides their relationship, sometimes relationships, they can get threatened by the amount of energy and attention you put in the business, right? And I've seen you guys balance this thing really well.
She was literally there from the beginning. When I made that switch back to the crew from working in the management office, Cheryl, the manager, said, well, God, I got to have somebody, and, I said, well, I'll try and think of somebody, and then I came into the office a couple of days later. She said, no, never mind. I found somebody, and she's going to be here in a few minutes. I'll introduce you. And it was Anna. No. And I recognized her from, she used to come to all the shows anyway with a bunch of friends of ours, girlfriends, not girlfriends of mine, but it's just a gaggle of girls that used to come, with always the ones that were kind of right down front, dancing always.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I know you. And he's like, yeah, I know you too, and we chatted a little bit, and we sort of spent the first probably at least a year just being really good friends. She used to call me up and tell me about these horrible dates that she had with guys, and then we went to have Chinese lunch one day, and then movie. I think our first movie date was we went to see No Way Out with Kevin Costner.
Yeah. Is that her in the background just now? Was she chiming in?
Yeah, she doesn't want me to talk about her.
So. Hi, Anna. Hey, she's gonna appreciate this. I just got a surprise couple of pictures that were just sent to me that I'm gonna share. See if you recognize this guy right here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Dan Pred just sent me this one.
Oh, no, that's it. Oh, that's his ex, Teresa. I was trying to think of who that was in the middle there. That's Teresa.
Yeah.
That's Dave Cole's next to me, who was our guitar tech at the time. Yep. Yeah. Dave Cole's is to my right, and on the far left is, God love him, bless his soul, Dave Moncrief.
Yeah, man.
Who sadly passed away just shockingly earlier, late last year, I guess it was.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't know where that picture was at. Where's that taken?
You know what? Maybe he can chime in, because he sent me another one here too. Let me see this other one that he just sent. Oh no, it was the same one. He sent me this two of the same. But if he's on right now, maybe he can leave a message on our Facebook page here.
I'm not looking at it. I've still got the other page up. I'm not looking at it. Maybe I should have shut the other one down. Maybe that's my problem.
That's okay. You know what? I'll go to the Facebook page and see if Dan can chime in and let us know where that was taken. But
he says, I don't know who that gal in the middle is.
Yeah, I'm just gonna leave that one alone. But
yeah, me too.
I get all sorts of people have jumped in. Jen Rankin says, "Did you just give me the finger when you were bandaging the finger?"
Oh,
and
sorry, that was just part of a Rolling Stone story. Sorry about that.
No, that's all. I loved it. Jim Jelvick, my buddy in the UK, said the best thing he ever learned to do is type. He's an amazing musician that I went to school with in junior high school, and now he's a teacher in the UK. And he's wonderful about sort of every time we go over to Europe, we get together, we have some dinner, meet his family, and he snags Jennifer Batten for concerts when she comes over. And so
nice.
Spread the family out a little bit. But
very cool.
He says he doesn't know who the person in the middle was, but Dan Pred, where was that picture taken? It looks like he had just joined shortly before we talked, but we'll find out. Okay. We'll find out. All right. So back, we got Chicago. You did that gig for quite a while, right? You were on that gig.
I was in and out with them because, the thing with Steve is that he didn't want to lose that gig. That was his golden goose, but he just, it's a lot of people to try and make happy. You got 4 bosses essentially plus the manager. So you really have 5 people that you have to try and somehow, it's the old spinning plates thing from the Sullivan Show. You're running from one end to that, trying to keep them from wob. You get one, sometimes it's like, oh man, this is gonna, and then spin, and but he didn't want to lose it regardless, because it paid great, and they travel first class. It's always, everything's 4 Seasons and Ritz-Carltons, and it's Chicago. So I was there for 2006. Then he came back for 07. 07, we bought our house out in the country. One of the things was, I was gone a lot, and Anna was like, this is not working anymore for me, as far as this neighborhood is changing, and I want space. I want to get out of here. I want to go out in the country. I want to get some property somewhere. We're like, how are we going to find property, around Portland? So we went on a few trips. We went to Boise, we went to Spokane, and we were looking around thinking that we would never find anything acreage, in a house that we could afford near Portland. And she found this place in late 2006, I want to say, I think it was. Yeah. And we came and looked at it a couple times, and I was like, oh, nice property, but the house was, boy, it needed some work, and we had just gotten our house in town. We bought our house in Southeast Portland in '93 and did a lot of work on it, and I was doing well. Finally, financially, things were really starting to pop. Things for her were great too, because she started working for a microchip company out in Beaverton, and so we were both finally doing well enough. We weren't living high on the hog, but we were doing well, and so we were able to buy a little ranch home in Southeast Portland, and spent a lot of time fixing it up and got it just right. And then she decided that she wanted to try and move somewhere else, and I was like, oh God, really? Just the thought of moving, if you've probably moved a few times, it's a real pain. And but yeah, we got lucky. We got out here. So all of 07, after we moved, just turned out because Steve came back. So then I was back to just pounding the pavement, as it were, trying to find a gig. But in the meantime, we sold our house and some other stuff that we had, and we had a nice little nest egg. So, and we needed to work on this house. So I was kind of the laborer working with our contractor for most of 07. 08, I got a call from another tour manager buddy of mine, Larry Moran, who's done like Cinderella and Poison, and now he runs a lot of these big, you may even work for Larry on its Monsters of Rock cruises things. He does a lot of those. He produces those with a buddy. And he called me and said, I'm in Japan right now with Night Ranger, and I can't do the US portion of it because I'm scheduled to go out with Cinderella. So would you take this over for me? And I'm like, geez, yeah, of course. When I was in the Air Force, I tried to go see Night Ranger at the Puyallup Fair once.
Oh my God.
In like 83, 84.
Yep,
when
was ZZ Top.
I think, yeah, and I think Sister Christian was like number 3 or something or whatever at the time. You couldn't turn on up there KISW or anything for any length of time and not hear it, during the day. But we couldn't get in. There was no tickets to be had.
Kelly, so here if you're watching right now, we're chatting about your music.
A good Oregon boy from Springfield originally.
That's right.
One of the sweetest people in the music business, and one of the best singing drummers ever.
Incredible, man. Love that guy.
Amazingly talented guy, and I don't get to see him very often, but I did run into him last year actually in Wisconsin. They played before us, and I was at Pat Benatar and Neil Giraldo. Right. So I got to hang out for a couple minutes backstage with Kelly and Jack and Brad and the guys.
I'll be talking to Kelly in a couple weeks actually on here.
Oh, so cool. Well, make sure you tell him I said hi.
I will. You got it.
So that was 08, 09 was Night Ranger.
Okay.
And then we were ironically back in my home state in South Dakota playing in Sioux Falls at Sioux Falls Arena, which was a big moment for me because that was one of the places that we always went to see concerts. I went there in '79 to see AC/DC open for Cheap Trick.
Oh my God.
One of the worst decisions in the music business history. They chose AC/DC as their opening act about 3 or 4 months after Highway to Hell came out.
Wow.
But they were riding the crest of Live at Budokan at the time. Yeah. And sadly for Robin and the boys, it didn't go well.
Easy on the show. Yeah.
But I was here. I am back in this arena, and the Night Ranger was opening for Journey.
Oh, cool.
And I got a call that day right after sound check from Steve saying, I just found out I got an opportunity to go out with Miley Cyrus. So could you come in and finish the second half of this big Chicago Earth, Wind and Fire tour? Because they're kind of freaking out. They don't want to let me go.
Yeah.
But they said if I was available, that they would be okay with it. So I was kind of doing him a favor, and he kind of thought he was doing me a favor too, because we hadn't been doing a lot of actual tour work. We were doing weekend warrior stuff. We were flying out on a Thursday, doing a Friday show somewhere else on Saturday, coming home on Sunday. A lot of that with Night Ranger.
Yeah.
Not a lot of bus work or things like that.
Sure.
And so I had to break the news to them that I was going to leave just as they were about to start. That was the first of what was going to be a long run with Journey for them, because they're both Bay Area bands.
Oh, right,
and so they'd known them for years, but I just couldn't pass up the opportunity and the money, frankly, to go back to Chicago. So I left. I went back to Chicago. Then I was with them. I was with them then all the way through until 2015 through 2015.
I remember meeting you during that span. Dan Pred had talked to you about you forever. Dan and I have been so close since I moved here in '94, but he's always talked about you. And I remember him introducing me to you. We met at a couple of local shows when you're back in town, but I remember having a Skype chat with you when you're on the Chicago tour. And I think you were in Malaysia, maybe? We
were in Singapore.
Yeah, you got this huge tower. You're 60 floors up or more. And my kids thought it was so cool that we could actually get you, because you kind of like pan the camera over the balcony, to look over the side. And
that hotel was behind us. They had the ship on top of it, right?
That's right.
That's kind of a famous landmark in Singapore.
God, man.
I remember that.
Yeah, man. That was for my kids. It was a really neat thing to experience. Dan Pred sent a picture of Nightwing just now. Can I share that one?
Oh yes, absolutely. Please do.
This is great. Oh man.
I wonder if he remembers much of the ill-fated show in Selby where I nearly killed the bass player Scott Sauer. Wow. That's Scott. Scott's the one with the hat on the far left.
And he's covering up his burn wounds.
Well, see, he had a kind of a wispy little mustache that probably was mostly because of me burning most of it off.
My God, look at Dan Reed's porn stash. That's really good.
Oh, yeah, that was him. Boy, that's so funny. That's how how you always kind of in your head, people sort of stay the same when you kind of think of them. It took a long time for those images to get out of my head. And oh wow, this is fantastic. That's Davey Brown there on the left
with the striped shirt.
Scott, with the striped shirt, he was a great guitar player.
Yeah, but that shirt, he lost all rock cred with that shirt. Meanwhile, Dan Pred's got the rainbow shirt on, which is fantastic, man.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
Rainbow.
This is fun.
So fun.
Dan Pred says, I do remember, Terry. I still have nightmares. But I asked Dan to do a conversation like this.
You should.
Oh, he wouldn't do it.
Well, come on. All you got to do is just start talking. Sitting on her office is right here. She's probably thinking, he just will not shut up, this guy. Now everyone knows what she has to put up with for 32 years.
That's what I love, man. This is all about my buddies that are like this, because I just want to share conversations. I don't want to get into, well, I'll tell you this, all right? For me, these conversations have been a distraction that I can have a schedule and I can look forward to something. Hi, Anna. Hey, come here for a sec. Come here, Anna.
Wait a minute. Hey, come here.
Come on in here, Anna.
She can't hear you, but here.
Hello.
Hi, Anna. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm working now.
Oh, it froze up, Terry. Hi, there she is. Hey, happy early anniversary.
Well, thank you. Gosh, way early, but
yeah. We were talking a little bit about you picking out the place the end of 2006 and moving into this place in 2007. We hadn't gotten into the part of the conversation where we're going to talk about this farm that you've developed. You've got my favorite part of the day. We have the daily goat experience.
Yes.
How did the goats come about?
I just wanted goats, and he let me have them. We got two first, two girls, Lucy and Suki, and then we decided we needed more goats, so we got Chuck and Larry.
I love Chuck and Larry. A lot
Yeah.
of personality in those guys.
Yeah, sadly Larry's gone. We miss him, but
Oh,
Poor Larry Bear.
rest in
I
peace,
wanna-
Larry.
yeah, I want to get a pig now, but he won't let me.
Oh, I just met someone yesterday that they breed fainting goats out here. And
Oh,
I really want fainting goats. I think my pal Mike May is trying to get some property together so he can get fainting goats, but he wants to torture them. He wants to scare them.
Well, I was gonna say it is kind of sad because
It
it's like,
is.
oh wait, look, let's scare him, and they fall over.
It's depressing, but you don't scare Chuck. So Larry passed away. You still got Chuck, and you still have Suki and
Lucy.
Lucy.
Yeah, they would just run. They wouldn't fall over.
Oh,
So.
it's you've got 3 goats, got chickens, and
Oh gosh, 10 chickens now.
Okay.
3 cats, a dog, and
10 chickens.
Okay. So what happens when you're on? Well, okay, I should say when you're able to go back on tour, Terry. Anna, are you primarily just the wrangler for the animals?
Oh yeah, I do everything.
You don't have any help? No ranch hands?
No.
Wow, that's a big.
No help. I do it all by myself.
You got a riding lawnmower?
Yes.
Your property is so beautiful. You guys, for people that aren't friends with you guys on Facebook or that have not been out there, it really is the sanctuary space that when you post your goat videos,
Yeah.
I know you've heard this, but for right now, people are on edge, right? I mean, there's a lot. The global pandemic is really tough for people that are, especially inner city people that can't get away from anything but their, their places. And I felt like if there's a way for you to have a webcam stream just pointing at your yard all the time,
Well, see, we don't want everyone to show up here.
That's the thing. You could just share it, and then they don't have to know your property. But if they could just see, because there's always something going on with the animals, right? They're funny.
Yeah. Well, that's true.
Even just your space is gorgeous, and I love what you've done to the place. It reminds me. I grew up in Montana in the woods, right? And it reminds me, like a ski lodge out there. That's what it looks like.
Yeah. It's a lot of work, but I tell him, what am I going to do? Sit around and watch TV?
Yeah. Well,
no.
A lot of people do.
It keeps me out of trouble.
Yeah. God.
But I do still have to work.
Okay.
So, I just wanted to make sure he wasn't saying bad things.
Oh no, we talked about all the shenanigans he avoided on tours. So.
Good.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Kevin.
It's really nice to see you too.
Sorry.
I'll talk to you later, hon.
Okay.
I was hoping your video was going to freeze up right on the kiss, but it didn't.
I forgot to tell you my rock star story. I have one little rock star story.
Oh, a bunch of them, but let's hear you.
Well, no, I actually got to play.
Oh yeah, with Little River Band.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's hear that.
Well, I had 2 different occasions to do that. One of them was just a quirky thing. It was really tough to bring those people over. It's very expensive to bring them over from Australia, the whole crew and most of the band and everybody. So we had to do everything in one big lump. And so they weren't able to take advantage of offers they would get for a casino date for a couple nights, good money, but just not even close to be enough money to fly everybody over and all that kind of stuff. And so they decided they were going to basically become a US based band. And this was in the end of 2014. And 2015 was going to be a big year because that was going to be their 30th anniversary then. Not 2015, 2004 into 2005. So the bass player Wayne called me and said, they had fired the drummer and got rid of some other people, and they were looking for, basically session people to fill out the lineup. And they were sort of trying to find a drummer, and he could not find a drummer in Nashville that he liked to save his life.
Really?
Some people could play some things really well and not other things. And it was just, he called and he said, I'm at my wit's end. I don't know. I've auditioned like 15 guys, and there's some that are okay. And I just don't, he goes, you should do it. And I go, me? I mean, what do you mean me? I haven't even played for years. I have Derek's old touring kit, a beautiful pearl white Yamaha custom recording kit that he sold me for like $1,200. And the cymbal vault's worth more than that,
Yeah.
And I had it set up, and I used to, put on headphones every once in a while and play whatever, stick on AC/DC and just go crazy, working out some frustrations for a while. But other than that, hardly played at all for probably close to 10 years at that point. And he said, no, you really should. And we laughed, and that was the end of it. I said, look, just relax. You're going to find somebody. A couple of weeks later, he calls back. I can't find anybody, dude. He goes, are you sure you couldn't do this? Just think about it. He started to really think about it. One less airfare, one less guy on the bus, one less hotel room, one extra salary for you. You could still be the road manager. We'll just pay you to be the drummer too,
Nice.
And I said, well, I tell you what, if nothing else, it'll give me an excuse to start playing again. And so I had their sound man send me a live tape, and I started to play. And I, some stuff I couldn't play Night Owls, that kind of weird shuffly thing. Yeah. I couldn't get that. It just was tough. But the rest of it was fairly simple. And so he checked up on me a little while later, and I said, yeah, it's kind of fun. I'm having a good time. But you'll find somebody, so don't worry about it too much. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, fluke of things, they get a call from their agent saying, do you think you could do New Year's Eve in Vegas? Because another act they handled, BTO, Bachman Turner Overdrive, their drummer, Robin Bachman, was going to have angioplasty, so he couldn't play. But they was all booked and done and everything. All their fans were set to go, and they're going to play at the Fremont Street Experience. Have you ever done that?
Oh, I've done that one.
Yeah. So suddenly it's like he calls me. I'm driving downtown Portland. I'm going to pick up Anna, and he said, "Okay, here's the deal. But we have an offer to do New Year's Eve, but I can't even remotely say yes unless you say you can do it, because there's no way. I can't find anybody. Even if I could, there's no time to rehearse and all that."
Yeah.
So I still do not know how I managed, where this came from inside of me, but I said, yep, I'll do it. So anyway, fast forward, the thing that happened in between me saying yes and going to do it was that BTO called and said, here's the wrinkle. We want to come and play too, because our fans have already, we're getting killed with complaints of you got to be kidding. You're going to cancel. We don't want to go see them. We want to see you. So do you think that you guys could play 2 or 3 BTO songs as well? You'll be our band, Randy and I will come and we'll play, Taking Care of Business and You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet or whatever. And then
you already had the cowbell part down for You Ain't Seen Nothing.
Exactly, right?
Yep.
So again, he calls and says, do you think you can play some BTO stuff? And again, usually, the fight or flight thing is be oh no, I could never do that. But somehow I go, yep, no problem. And so I find myself, no rehearsal. I never had a chance to go meet the LRB guys in Nashville and rehearse. We fly to Vegas.
Oh, wow.
New Year's Eve going into 05. And they want to rehearse a little bit, so we have to kind of take part of the drums and go into one of the casinos that's right there by that stage and use the little showroom that was empty and start working on, now they wanted to play 7 of their songs instead of 2 or 3. So basically a half and half deal. And so anyway, long story short, I got to get up there in front of what they said was 20,000.
Dude.
They shot it on, how they had that roof over and they projected it up there. And I had our front of house guy recorded on DAT tape for me. And so I have a recording of it. But then
it's funny because you've already been in front of so many people by that point on stage, just front, on stage and behind the scenes, but it's totally different.
Oh, dude, right? It's, running out there to fix a cymbal or running out there to hand someone a guitar is kind of nerve-wracking enough when there's 90,000 people there.
Yeah.
But when you're supposed to be the guy that's actually going to be performing, it's that's a whole nother thing. That I got to scratch that itch though.
Yeah.
And then I got even a better situation later. They continued to try and find a drummer and thought they had found one, but we were going to go to Mexico to open 2 shows for America later on in 2005. Actually, the first couple things they were going to do on that 30th anniversary tour. And the day we already knew that he had lost his passport, but back then you could still use your original birth certificate. Right. Which is what we use to get the work permits and stuff. We get to the airport and we all get converged to Dallas to fly down to Mexico City on American Airlines. And he tells us that he didn't bring the original. I'm like, you got your original birth certificate? He goes, no, I didn't bring the original. I grabbed the copy. I just have the copy. I go, dude, you got to have the raised seal that. And I talked to Wayne and I go, what are we going to do? And flight got delayed, canceled, all this stuff. And we get it like, okay, we're going to go. And they started shoving people on the plane. And they looked at it and went, they knew that this wasn't going to work, but they like, fuck it, get on the plane anyway.
Wow.
They let us go. But when we got to Mexico City, immigration went, nope, sent him on the first plane back. So by the time we all cleared customs and got through and met the promoters, we were super late. We're only like 90 minutes to doors.
Oh, wow.
And we have no drummer.
Dude.
We're like, where'd he go? I can't remember his name now. He wasn't with them very long.
It was me.
And they said, he's already halfway back to Dallas by now. So they kind of looked at me and went, I go, come on, let's go. I was just in tour manager mode. I didn't care. Let's just get to the gig.
Mexico
and they
City.
wrote up a little set list. We went out and did a quick sound check, and I ended up doing 2 shows. And the second one was up in Monterey, and I actually have that one on video. Dan Fred was a sweetheart. He helped me kind of put together this little actual DVD with a cover and the song titles and the logo on the disc and all that, so I could send it to my family and stuff.
Man, we need to sit down and have a little watching party for this. I want to watch some of this. Yeah,
I will let you watch it. You'll be the only one.
No, well, all right. We'll just share clips. I've never got to see Terry behind the drums, but I'm not surprised that Dan Pred made that happen to get this archived. He's, we can't say enough good things about Dan Pred unless we can get him on the show, and then
Oh, he has to do it. He's got to do it.
I think just it's that guy is so humble, but he's got stories for miles, and not just on drums, but the whole video production angle of things too is amazing.
Absolutely. Besides that, he can't say that he's nervous. He's played in front of literally, I think the biggest crowd we had, I want to say, was in Prague, and we had like 102,000 people that they played in front of when they opened for the Stones. So, don't give me this I'm nervous stuff.
You know that he worked with the Seahawks, right? He did video work with Richard Sherman and Pete Carroll, and yeah, dude.
I almost wore my Hawks thing for you today, but
I wore my Flock of Seagulls shirt only because it's laundry day. Hey, you know what? Dan says Terry's a kick-ass drummer and he's a lefty. I didn't see that, but
here's the thing that Dan Pred was always amazed about. When I first sat down, when my brother, back to that original story, my brother, convinced my mom to get this kit. And we took it to his house to set it up because he had the amp and the guitar and all that kind of stuff. And when we sat down to play, my brother gave me so much shit because I'm ambidextrous. I eat and write and brush my teeth left-handed, but I'm mostly right-handed, throwing a ball or golfing or whatever. But when I sat down to play, because back in those days there wasn't a lot of videos, you didn't see people performing that much, as I had said earlier. So I didn't know, nor did I understand why the heck you would want to cross. That's stupid.
Right.
This felt like, this is the bomb.
So
the hi-hat's over here, the snare's over here. This made sense. Dan Pred looked at me like I was insane the first time he saw me play too. He's like, how do you do that? I'm like, what do you mean? How do you do what? Because most people play like this. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
It wasn't until I saw Kenny Aronoff play once, and he doesn't do it all the time, but he's the first drummer I ever saw play open-handed like that.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not a freak. There's somebody else in the world that does that.
There's not a whole lot that Kenny Aronoff can't do. It's pretty sad, man. But
also a very sweet man too.
Yeah. I just met him at NAMM. I've never had a sit-down conversation, but I've heard great things about him. And
so
I'm sure he's probably sat in on a handful of gigs that you've tour managed, just because he seems to he's always the guy that they call, right? It's like,
I've only gotten to just meet him once when we were in Europe in 2014, and I forget who he was even there with. Oh, he was playing with John Fogerty.
All right.
And they played the night after us, but they were in town, so they came down to see the Chicago set, and he knows Tris, so he came to say hi to Tris. And I also met I forget his name, who was the drummer for Oingo Boingo on that night.
Oh.
He's a crazy drummer.
Johnny Bonos.
Yeah.
We do gigs with him all the time. Actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, you know what? I see that Jocko Nash says he's got a copy of that video, the Little River Band video.
Jocko is like a good friend and a long time LRB fan, so he may have one. I'm not even sure I gave one to Dan Reed, my last copy, and he has it somewhere. And I don't know if he ever even watched it. I didn't get it back from him. So if Dan ever sees this, bring back next time you come to Portland, bring my my live LRB concert video back.
It's probably in Cleveland right now, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, right? So all right. So you know what all right. So we covered like your tenure in Chicago. You had a couple of huge notable gigs even after that. When I saw you last on stage, you were tour manager for Pat Benatar and Neil Giraldo.
Yeah, that was after I left Chicago. I took a little bit of time off. You know, sometimes you just get that had been a pretty good stretch of time. Like Little River Band, it was kind of a 10-year-ish thing in and out.
Yeah, I
had a relationship with them for over 10 years, working with them from 05 through 2015. And it was time for a change. You know, they're just kind of sometimes with that many people, if you lose a relationship with one of the main guys, which is what happened to me, we just kept butting heads on things, and it was untenable. You know, I mean, there was no way I was going to win that. And I wasn't trying to win it. I just was like, I don't know what I can do to make this guy happy. You know, he just is never happy, you know, and I would get blamed for things that didn't have anything to do with me. But, you know, you can't say it's not my fault. You just have to go try. I'll do better next time. You know, you just have to suck it up.
Yeah.
And so I took a little time off, and then I got a call from Tom Consolo, who manages Sammy Hagar and Pat and Neil and REO Speedwagon. And I had met him when REO and Chicago toured together. It's such as you know, the relationships you make, it's like a bridge. It all leads to other things. That's how you build your network. You know,
Absolutely.
I'm fairly personable, so I get to know and meet a lot of people. So then I get calls from people saying, hey, by the way, you know, I'm looking for somebody. Are you available? And I was really looking at that time. So in July of 2016, I started with Pat and Neil, which was crazy because I said, like, one of the first big things that ever happened was the LRB thing. And I literally ran into her. She didn't remember that, of course. Why would she? But, you know, I told her, I said, yeah, I kind of accidentally met you once years ago, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, so I was with them for a couple of years, 2016 and 17 and into 18. And at that time, another person that I knew, actually a guy that had come in as our LD, had gotten a new gig with Bryan Setzer.
Lighting director, for those of you that don't know.
Yeah.
All right.
Michael Duncan, great human being and amazing LD. And he said, what are you doing? Are you still with Pat and Neil? And I said, yeah. And he said, would you consider going down to San Diego and meeting Bryan Setzer's manager? He's getting ready to do a couple of Stray Cats reunions. They hadn't played together in about 9 years, but he mostly does his own thing. He's got another band called the Rockabilly Riot, which is a kind of a 4-piece, sort of bigger sounding version of the Cats, which includes piano. Amazing.
Yeah.
And then he has the Bryan Setzer Orchestra, which is just truly one of my favorite things I've ever done. It's incredible. He's such an amazing artist. But anyway, so I flew down to San Diego, and I still had some stuff on the books with Pat and Neil, but I wanted to kind of check this out, and we hit it off. I hit it off with his managers really well, and the tour manager who was wanting to leave and get off the road, it was time. He was getting ready to have a baby, and you know, he wanted to pass it off to somebody else, and so I took that on, and so yeah, next thing I know, I'm down in Vegas and doing a Stray Cats gig. And I was like, wow. And I'm so lucky that I ended up working with a lot of people that was my music. There was stuff. I mean, I wasn't a huge Stray Cat. I didn't go out and buy all their albums and stuff and go to all their shows, but it was part of the time that music was such a big deal when you're that age, you know, in your teens and late teens and whatnot. And so here I'm watching them on stage play, and you know, Bryan was a great guy. The other two guys are amazing too. And so that led to, you know, I'm still working with them. You know, we had a big year last year. We went to Europe and did their 40th anniversary tour. And, you know, I didn't know what that was going to be like. I had no idea how big. First of all, I forgot that they had kind of moved to England, couldn't get arrested in America. So in like 78, I want to say, maybe even 77, they, as young guys, they moved to England, and they were kind of in that whole scene. Their crowd of people that used to hang out together every night was like Joe Strummer and Topper Headon from the Clash, and Chrissy Hine from that whole Pretenders group, and David Byrne, and you know, that's their group of friends that they all used to hang out with. And they had some hit songs there, and then they came back to the States, right? So I didn't know any of that. So when we went to Europe, I wasn't sure how it was going to go over. Our first thing was in Spain at a big festival, and we got there. They were headlining because it was a big deal. They hadn't been played forever together. Yeah. But when we got there, all the bands that were playing were like thrash metal, death metal, and I was like, what the, I'm ready for the coins again. Right? I mean, of all things, these three guys to go out there with a little, you know, a snare and a kick drum and a big stand-up bass, and I'm like, these people are going to murder this band. And I think it's, aside from maybe seeing Dan Pred play for the first time in front of like 70, 80,000 with Bon Jovi or the Stones or something, and getting that goosebump thing, watching those guys walk out there and seeing like 20,000 people go berserk. Wow. They went crazy. And it turned out that they were just there listening to, they were just music fans, so they appreciated everything else, but they were there for the Stray Cats, man. And they just, every night they just crushed it. And we had monster huge crowds every single night.
That doesn't surprise me. I've seen the Setzer Orchestra, right? And the thing that blows my, I've met Slim a few times, you know, it seems like a really fun, interesting cat.
Really.
But Bryan Setzer, for people that don't know, I mean, that guy is incredibly talented. Yeah. Dude, like wicked guitarist. And Jennifer Batten took me to see the Setzer Orchestra here at the Schnitz when, Christmas Eve. And I remember her saying she was a big fan of his playing, and we saw the show, and I was floored by the whole band. Smoked, right? They're all great players, but you could tell he walked in like a minister, right? He walked in and had like this amazing power over the room. I get goosebumps thinking about it, because what floored me then was they were so tight, the tightest band I think I'd seen, with so many members. But then you told me something even more bizarre, that because I thought for sure they must have like 4-hour sound checks during the day to tighten up. Now tell me the deal with those guys. Tell me about their day, what it looks like.
No sound check. He doesn't like doing sound checks because his theory on the whole thing is that he wants to hear the sound of the band, that stage and that room for the first time, just like the audience is. Warts and all, if it comes to that, if it sounds like crap or whatever. And some rooms don't sound good. Some stages don't sound good. If it's cement, if it's hollow wood, if it's got Mylar, it changes the sound. But those guys they're amazing musicians, all of them. And it's all charted. He writes all this charts. He writes it all. He has somebody that works with him, but he charts it all. And it's just incredible. And yeah, when he walks out there, and it's all just like, it's very casual, kind of like, it's like, okay, you ready to go? And we're always a little early, with him. If we're scheduled for 8, we almost always hit the first note about 7:56, 7:57. Nice. But as soon as he walks to the side of the stage and he says hi to everybody, he puts his little ear things in, not ear monitors. He just wears plugs, like these custom made plugs, ear plugs. And he's like, you ready to go? And he's like, okay, let's go. There's no, we got to wait 4 minutes. It's like, no, the boss is ready. Here we go. And it's just crushes every single night. It's the funnest thing I've ever done. Chicago was amazing. LRB, Night Read, they're all amazing artists in their own right. But Bryan and the orchestra especially is something really special. I mean, it's incredible. And I was so disappointed and sad for him that we did not get to do the Christmas tour this past year, because he had a health issue that came up during the summer, got kind of worse, backed off, got worse again. And then finally it was something that only time and time away from live music was going to help. Sure. So we were about 2 or 3 days before flying out to Minneapolis to start the Christmas tour in November, and we had to cancel.
Were they rescheduled dates?
Well, we would have probably rescheduled for this year, but then, of course,
Yeah.
happened, and now, as you know, our industry is dead. We're done. And I keep hearing everything from fall of 2021 to now. Somebody I read, I forget if he was some kind of promoter or something, saying 2022, and it's like, I can't live until 2022. It's like there's no way.
Yeah.
We might be able to scratch and claw our way through this year, maybe.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, everybody in our industry right now is trying to figure out where can we get other revenue streams, or and I try not to get too heady into that, even not just in conversation here, but on my own. I see people really struggling with the emotional drain that this has taken, and I know the conversations that we've been doing right now, for me, keeps me a little occupied during the day. I love being able to catch up with my buddies and find out, how are you getting through your day? And it's a really good distraction for a lot of my friends to see the other side of things that they wouldn't normally know.
Yeah.
I mean, you've worked with artists across the board, man. I mean, off camera, you and I have talked about some experiences that were chapters for the book that you really couldn't name names, and and all of those things need to happen to form the type of person you are and the kind of resilience you have in the business, right? But if we hadn't had a global pandemic happening right now, May 4th, is it the 4th, I think, where would Terry Finley be right now?
Well, we were originally scheduled in April. We were going to go to Japan with the Cats.
Okay.
That was kind of on the books to begin with, but it's hard to say whether that would have happened with Bryan's health. Okay. I don't know if he'd have been ready to do that yet or not, but surely we would have probably done. We probably would be home now.
Okay.
But we'd be getting ready to go back out. My guess is that in June we would have been back out with the Rockabilly Riot band, which is his other band.
Mm-hmm.
And two of those guys are also in the orchestra. Noah Levy, the drummer, and Kevin McKendry, the piano player, is amazing. They both play in the orchestra as well. And also the bass player, Mark Winchester, was in the orchestra for a long time too. When they used to do shows all year round, when it wasn't just a Christmas show, they used to be able to take it on the road and do more. Like one of the live videos I look, if you go to YouTube, you can Google a lot of stuff and come up on YouTube. One of them was like the Woodstock Festival from like '99.
Wow.
Where they opened playing the Hawaii Five-0 theme song.
Oh, nice.
And in the middle of summer and stuff, and that was incredible.
That bass player, by the way, watching him do the upright where he's jumping on the upright bass and flipping. Oh, what the hell, man? It's like a Cirque du Soleil show, It's
amazing. And they all kind of do that. I mean, Lee Rocker with the Cats does it too, even though he's an older guy now. He gets up on there. I posted some great pictures from the tour last year of Bryan getting up on Slim Jim's kick drum, Slim out front, leaning way back, doing the cymbals, the big at the end, and Lee up on standing on his bass. Talk about the crowd going berserk when they do that kind of stuff. It's like three guys. That's a pretty amazing thing. It's like watching Buddy Holly and the Crickets. It's like just three guys doing their thing, but enough sound to just like be blowing this 20,000 people away. Yeah, it's crazy.
That is.
So we would probably be home right now, getting ready to go out with the Rockabilly Riot in June would be my guess, and then we would be. He doesn't like to overwork.
Yeah.
Which was kind of one of the great things about starting up with him, is that last year ended up being a really heavy year because I started and ended with Pat and Neil, and in between was Stray Cats, and then we did a US portion of it that was a combo thing. Part of it was Stray Cats, and part of it was Rockabilly Riot. That nobody had ever done that before. That was a logistical nightmare in some ways because everything had to be separate. Two separate road floats, two separate per diems, everything was separate because there was two different corporate entities.
Yeah.
And it couldn't come out of each pile. It had to be, so it was really tricky to figure, okay, now these guys are going to go home, then they're going to meet up here and they're going to come back, and these guys are going to come out now. And they each had their own people. We had this great guy who's on here watching, I think Matt Jenkins. Hello, Matthew. Who was brought to my attention by Dan, actually. He's worked with Dan Reed doing some stuff over there, the Snake Oil and Harmony tour that he does with that other guy, we were looking for a guy to be, I told him, right, look, I can't look after Bryan because they were going to travel separately. There was no doubt about that. Bryan was going to get a bus. He likes to be by himself and do his own thing as his wife come out, and we have our assistant Jennifer. And so they're in charge of their own world. And I'm like, well, how am I supposed to make sure they get to Paris in time when we're not going to be staying at the same hotel? We're going to be in Versailles. They're going to be, you know. So I said that they have to have their own people. So they each hired their own road manager essentially, and I coordinated everything. They came to me and here's the plan. We put together our itinerary and off we went. And then they came and did the States that way as well, jumping back and forth. And then at the end of that, we finished. We flew home on Labor Day. Thought we'd have a couple months off and then start up the Christmas tour, which didn't happen. So I've been off for a long time. I've been off since Labor Day.
That's an extended quarantine. My goodness. Yeah.
Well, at first it was like I was the odd man out. Everybody else I knew was jumping back onto other projects that they were going on with. Our, you know, the production manager for us also does REO Speedwagon full time, so he was back to that, and everybody else was getting gigs, and I was at home lamenting the fact that I felt horrible for Bryan, but I also had bills to pay, you know, and I was trying to find another gig, and I then all of a sudden this all happened and nobody was working. So, you know,
but still have bills to pay.
Still have bills to pay. And you know, Anna's working full time, which is great. And she gets to work from home, which she has now for probably 5 or 6 years. So like I said, that it means that we haven't had to change our life that much.
Yeah.
Just go to the store a lot less than we usually do. And we're just trying to muddle our way through like everybody else, disseminate information and figure out what's what and how to be, you know, we live our life like we always do, which is treat everybody with kindness. And we have friends all across the spectrum from extreme this way to extreme that way and everything in between. And we just smile and wave at everybody and be good people and good human beings and post a few daily goat videos once in a while. And
those videos are so important, man. They're good for my mental state of health. You know,
well, I was thinking about starting a little YouTube channel. I don't know how to do that, but I might try and do that. Get the daily goat.
I'm happy to help. Happy to help.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Really, man. The fact that you talked about being kind.
That's
to
a
people,
good piece. Should I just leave that one there?
Nose pick, yeah, I like that one. You know, this has kind of been a common thread with a lot of my friends that we've been talking to about kindness, you know, and the way that you treat other people. I've mentioned it a couple of times in my interviews that Jim Carrey did this commencement speech to a group of business students years ago. And this soundbite that came from it was what I kind of used as my slogan for my web business. That was the effect you have on others is the greatest form of currency there is. And the relationships that you built along the way, everything from working with Dan Reed and Dan Pred, all the way through Little River Band and Night Ranger, and Chicago and Pat Benatar, you've developed a reputation of somebody that can get stuff done. I've watched you in action, man. I've seen you be firm but fair, and you know you drive the ship really well. But I think it's really rare to find somebody that has the kindness in their heart that you do, and it's just endearing, man. It really is cool. I'm really grateful to know that there are guys like you in the business. And
thanks, man.
I think that the Daily Goat thing you kind of laugh about, but there's this serenity space where Terry's got his goats. Terry and Anna have the goats. And just the simple fact, like when you're feeding them the pineapple, that's the craziest thing ever, because they go nuts, man. It's like it's like feed them crack, you know. But you know, it's humorous, and we can just escape the mundane, you know, or just the incessant political spectrum and you know, and thoughts of futility with the pandemic, and just look at the important things, like simple things around your house. I would bet Anna really appreciates having a little more Terry time around right now. You know,
we're best friends at the end of the day. We really are. We first of all, we laugh all the time. Okay. I mean, we belly laugh all the time. We're both silly. We're like a little comedy team, but we're only just doing it for each other.
Yeah.
I swear the animals look at us sometimes like, you guys are always laughing. What is so funny about it? But yeah, we have a great time, and we try and. I can't do the political stuff anymore. I know where everybody stands that I know. I don't put mine out there that much anymore, because all you get is backlash from one direction or another.
For sure.
And I just kind of feel like as long as you're a good human being And, you know, at the end of the day, I'm just a kid that grew up in a little town in South Dakota.
Yeah.
And I approach my work like that. I look around all the time and I think, I mean, I can't tell you how many times, and I'm sure this has happened to you too. You know, you grew up in a pretty small town in Montana,
Right.
and you found yourself as a member of Flock of Seagulls, and before that with I forget the name,
Emotion.
and you're playing these big events, and you're in a group of people, and it's like the guys from Wang Chung, and the guys from this and that and the other, and you're going, I'm just a kid from Montana, man. What am I doing here?
Yeah.
I've had that countless times where it's like, this is bizarre.
Yeah.
What's wrong with this picture?
Yeah.
Sammy Hagar, Mick Fleetwood, Pat Benatar, Neil Giraldo, you know, and me.
You know,
having a conversation in a little circle.
But after working with them that whole time, you can see that a lot of those guys are just the same dudes, right? I mean, Sammy comes off that way too. He's so endearing, right? And you can see that he doesn't take one bit of it for granted where he's at. He appreciates the camaraderie he has with his mates.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, looking at this whole thing globally, right? It doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you're in. We really are we're truly like all in this together. I mean, they talk about that, but I think, you know, Dan Reed has been promoting that kind of mindset for a long time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I saw that he just jumped on here just now and he's making some comments. So he's he said something I think Scott Valentine had asked how Bryan's health was doing right now, and you kind of touched on the fact that he's still kind of going through some stuff to battle and.
Well, I don't think I'm out of line to say, I think it was public knowledge that he, the reason why we canceled the Christmas tour is because he developed severe tinnitus.
Oh, wow.
It was a problem that he had around 15 years ago, and it flared up when we were in Europe. It got worse when we were in the States. Surprisingly, it's a much louder stage when he's working with the Stray Cats, and he's got Slim Jim bashing away on that snare drum next to him, as opposed to the orchestra, which is just you would think. I mean, the orchestra's loud just acoustically when you're standing in front of it,
right?
But it's a different kind of thing, and I've never had it, but I've talked to a lot of people since then, and I helped him meet with some experts and stuff and talk to them about this particular problem. And it can be so bad that people, you know, would want to do harm to themselves because
right.
it's this constant screaming in your head that you cannot get away from. So rest is the only cure-all. We thought that the rest between Labor Day and just before Thanksgiving was going to be enough, and it just wasn't. So. And then we were hoping that this Christmas, and I think it's just, we don't know. I don't think anything is going to happen this year. So that probably is to his benefit. I think by next year, if we can manage to get all this behind us and get back to whatever the new normal is, I think we'll be able to get back out there and do some rocking again. I'm sure he'll be ready to go by that point. But, you know.
Probably, you know, chomping at the bit. I know that fans are so desperate to get this outlet too, you know, so I would imagine that the experience you're going to have with fans is going to be that much better, you know, just because it's
probably going to change across the board. I think that just everyone involved is going to be so appreciative of having a job. I mean, I will never complain about a 12-hour bus ride or bad catered food or some hotel that doesn't have our rooms ready in time.
Right.
You know, talk about first world problems.
Yeah.
Jesus, come on.
You know, and you've been in this business a long time, and you've seen the guys that are so crusty that just they have been so sort of scarred, you know, over the course of time that they are taking things for granted. You know, they're in this big world tour and they've got great opportunities, but life has kicked their ass a little bit, and so they're rough around the edges. But hopefully,
I think that this is going to sand down those edges to a pretty smooth sheen by the time we get back. Even the old crusty guys, like, I guess I'm kind of an old crusty guy now too. I think everyone's going to be very just appreciative. I'm much more appreciative than I've always been, I think, because like, how lucky are we? We get to travel around the world and do music stuff for a living and provide entertainment to people. I've never lost sight of that. And I never lost sight of the fact that I'm just a little kid from South Dakota that was lucky enough to meet a guy like Dan Reed that, you know, helped drag me along on this ride, and then I went off on my own magic carpet ride from there, you know, and then saw that come back kind of full circle too. So it's a good life, man. It's a good life.
Keeping those communication lines open, you know, building the networks in the right way, you know, that you treat people kindly the way you want to be treated, understanding where they are coming from because you stood in those shoes is certainly helpful. You know, I think I love that about you. Dan Reed is he's had a couple of comments here. He says he's here right now because he's secretly a Republican. with a winky face. Scott Valentine wants me to show the picture of Dan's porn stash because he heard the porn thing come up about his name.
Oh, right.
So there you go, Dan.
There you go, Dan.
If that look does not come back, I think you're missing out. But and then
I was telling the story of almost burning Scott Sauer's face off in Selby with the flash pot years ago.
Oh,
I'm sure he'll remember that story with our lighting desk that we sort of procured. I told Kevin.
You both figured out better paths of careers. Dan Reed also says 2020 mathematically is a self-defeating box. It was destined to be a shit year. So you know what? A lot of that may be true, but I do think we talked about silver linings that are happening right now with the pandemic. And so much of it is perspective, man. I mean, being able to be kind to people and be tolerant and appreciative for people, even that they might have differences, is so key right now. You know, I worry about a lot of people whose mindsets are kind of failing because, you know, you don't know if the financial thing is going to work out, or you don't know how much, you know, economically there's this future in your business. But if you can kind of just keep your eye on the prize, the stuff that really matters, family and being kind to others, man, I think it's all we can do.
It is all we can do.
99% of everything going on is so out of our control, right? And
completely.
And so when you look at the 1% of things that you can have within your grasp that you can do something about, it kind of gives you a pass. You don't have to stress about it as much because, you know, like too much of the stuff that's out there is it's overwhelming, it's futile, and you know, we just got to lean on each other.
And goats if you have them.
God, and if we can't have goats, then we can live through your goats. So I'll do some sharing. Make sure that your goat videos are public so I can always share. Okay.
I will do that. Anna keeps telling me that I should change the name from the Daily Goat to the Occasional Goat because I'm kind of lax on. It's really hard. I appreciate these. What do you call them? These influencers. It's hard to come up with new content all the time. You know?
Yeah, you don't have to. Just feed them every day. That's all.
I used to take pictures all the time on tour, and Anna would say, "Would you stop posting the same picture every time you're on the side of the stage? You see some of the front of the stage and the audience. It's boring. Do something different." And I kind of feel like the goat videos are the same. It's like, how many times can you feed a goat pineapple and have anybody care about it? So
it matters to me every day. You could post the same video every day, and I would love it as much as the first, man. So hey, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time, buddy. It's so good to see your face.
Good to see you too.
I'm glad you guys are healthy.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we're doing good. We're having a great time. Just laughing a lot and playing with our animals and trying to be good human beings.
Yeah, man. We need more Terry Finleys in the world. You know.
Thank you, Kevin.
Please give Anna my best, man. I love you, brother. Thank you for being here, and we'll hopefully get to hug each other soon. You know.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'd love to see you.
Okay.
All right.
All right,
Thanks,
buddy.
man. Bye, everybody.
Cheers, everyone.